Hello, Chris Mills, Managing Director at Citisoft.
Simon Swords, the Managing Director and founder of Fundipedia, a data management platform for asset managers.
Excellent. I should have really said that we are consultants for exactly those asset managers you just mentioned. So
Quite.
there we
an
are.
overlap.
I think it's a good thing as an icebreaker to start with a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But just to up the ante, I've actually got a limerick.
Amazing.
So I'm going to go for a limerick. You ready for this? In the world of finance, there's a star. Fundipedia leading by far. You ready?
I'm not.
With tech that's so sleek, they hit every peak, making investment as smooth as a car.
So my Irish foreign birth registration acknowledgement came through today, and I feel like I should send it back. I'm so sorry, guys. I can't.
Moving on.
Yeah, I can't be a part of your country. Yeah.
Now that was ChatGPT.
I know. It was good.
This is the right thing to do in this day and age.
Indeed, although I prefer Claude.
Excellent.
Right.
I've got a series of questions here that we're going to start digging a little bit into your business, into Fundipedia, into how that works, into what the clients and market are looking for, and how you're responding.
Yeah.
I'd like you to think about the future and what people are asking about, or what you see coming up next, and how you're responding to that.
Crystal ball. Exactly.
And then I think I'd like to dig a little bit into Simon and to your motivations and to how you got into this and where that can expand to. Recently, you're appointed as a senior advisor to the IA. I think that's a very good way to think about how you're engaging the clients, what they're asking for. And you're right. I'm going to move to a magic wand, not a crystal ball, and give you a wish.
Okay.
Just the one. You're not allowed to ask for any more wishes. We're not allowed that. But you can think about if there was one thing you'd like to change. Stay professional, obviously.
Oh, well, of course.
So that's the way we work today.
Fine.
We're at the start of September 2024. We've just had one of the most marvellous summers that England can produce, he says.
Yeah, historic.
What are you hearing from your clients? What are you seeing? What's the word on the street, new and old?
Word on the street. The word on the street is that the foundations upon which the industry has, built and had its best and happiest years are in need of a bit of attention.
Okay.
I think as an analogy, I think that's a fair one. I think most people would nod along to that. And that means, what does that mean precisely? It means you can't just expect clients to receive information from you the way that you've always presented it to them. You can't expect them to engage with you. Everybody bangs on about this generational shift of wealth and how young people, our children included, are going to want everything real time yesterday, if not before then. And I think one of the lines that and a client gave me this, I didn't come up with this, so I feel like I'm allowed to play it back to the industry, right?
Okay.
He was this lovely Scottish guy, and he said, "We've got fat on the bone, Simon." Which is just such a beautiful statement in many ways. And so we have to, and I had another guy who who I won't name, say, much like me, Simon, it's harder to keep the weight off as I get older. And the industry's obviously coming on now, right? It's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Technology, as it was introduced broadly to do lots of, really neat things. And, that got us to where we are. But I think there's been a hyper realization in the last 5 years, but a slow realization over the last 10 to 15 years that the good old days are behind us. And so now what we need to do is start to think about diversifying what products we have, changing the way that we speak to our clients and how we give and receive information. We are going to have to do more with less.
Yes.
Rationalization is huge, both in terms of resource. Unfortunately, there's been, swathes of cuts of good people being made redundant. But I think, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but obviously there's a human element to that, which is always difficult to watch. And obviously there's also, what you might call incumbent providers and incumbent legacy systems that people are having a pretty decent look at now, saying, right, okay, we can't just let this tick along anymore. The programmers that built it are literally all dying because it was built in 1980s, whatever, in its mainframe. So the cost of finding them, if indeed we can find them, is getting harder. So that's kind of background to how we got here, and then obviously there's a bunch of issues they're trying to tackle, right? So data is key to how they enhance their business. They're well and truly on board with that. They want to have a better relationship with their clients, so they want to use data to drive that. And I said 5 years ago, it's 20 years behind where Amazon is. Maybe that's a bit extreme. It's not 20 years anymore, but it's certainly 5 or 10. When you think about how insanely data-driven Amazon and all the other big co's are,
Agreed.
There's now this thing that they're right, okay, so maybe that does apply to us too. And so what gets really interesting about that is you chat to some firms and they still have their data governance people reporting into IT. Tends not to be the right approach. That tends to be a warning sign that they've not cottoned on to the fact yet that data is a key business requirement,
Yes.
not an IT.
Yes.
It used to be dark and dirty down in the basement with the IT people.
Oh, you'd lift a little lid, wouldn't you, and out they'd pop.
Yes, and they might bring some spreadsheets to you and say, this is where we are, right? Little data gnomes. Now, obviously, you want to see your data people reporting into the COO, you know? Because if the business isn't being driven by data, what it's being driven by, well, probably the old school politics and nonsense and bureaucracy that don't get them forward.
So I think it's interesting you say that, because I think we met... I'm not exactly sure which conference we met at first of all, whether it was one of the investment associations or one of the others. And I think there's an interesting balance, isn't there, between that optimism for what's possible and yet pragmatism about what's actually going on.
Yes.
And I think you're exactly right. You know, on all of these issues that you're pointing out can be thought of in both directions. You can be an optimist and think we can do better.
Yeah.
You can be a pessimist and say, our best days are behind us.
And the reality is, it's a combination of the two things. It's never as bad or as good as you fear.
Yes.
But what it is kind of against, which is a movable feast, is obviously regulation.
Yes.
You know, so it's not like they can stand still, or we as an industry, if I want to speak on our behalf, if I can stand still and say, right, well, let's take a snapshot of where we are, think about the good that we can do, SWOT analyze everything, think about the opportunities, threats, all that good stuff, strengths, weaknesses, and then go, right, you know, it's against this horrid backdrop of moving technology, AI, blockchain, of moving regulation that's kind of going with or without them. You know, I've heard the complaint over and over again, you know, the regulators don't speak to us. They just impose these things upon us and expect us to be able to drop everything. And, you know, I'm not going to argue whether or not the regulators are being reasonable, but I will say that they do bring forward regulation and don't necessarily sit there and say, take your time, guys. That's all right. These are all hard deadlines. So there's a real, you know, movable feast there. So lots of, you know, it's like trying to change the wheels on a moving car.
You mentioned you used SWOT analysis earlier, and I'm a good professional consultant. You're talking my language, so therefore, I'm interested in what your. I mean, if we break that down into that positive and negative.
Yeah.
So if you think about that market environment, what do you see as the strengths of the market and the opportunities? Let's. Can you list a few of those that you see?
I can. So strengths are things like enormous plug, the IA, a trade body by the industry, for the industry, right? Nothing says we're happy to try to collaborate more than a team of 30 individuals that sits on the engine advisory panel from all walks of life, who are all getting in a room at least once a quarter, and then obviously having loads and loads of chats in between and doing their damnedest to kind of understand what good looks like and at a community level, right? Almost like a social experiment. Like, you know, I tried that, didn't work. All right, good to know. So that's kind of important.
Are they that committee, that grouping? Are they all just technologists? Are they all just of a certain? What's the mix? I'm interested because it's a. They obviously have a desire for change and they're optimistic about that. Are they front, middle, back? Are they across all wealth, asset management?
They tend to be people that are capable of making change in organisations, and they sit where they need to sit to make the change in the space that they've maybe worked themselves up through into.
Yes.
So, operations people, no surprise, COO, where it's distribution people, head of distribution.
Good.
You don't, and I say this as a techie, you don't necessarily want the techies driving the cart.
It's too easy. It's too, especially nowadays. It's too easy to say one of the AI is clearly an opportunity, but it shouldn't be everything.
Yeah, and as somebody where I see it, I've got infinite technological resource. I could build basically anything in AI, and I've got some side businesses where I'm doing some interesting AI stuff. I'm not doing enough of it in Fundy. We're only at the R&D stage in Fundy. But the reason that we're still in the R&D phase in Fundy is because we recognise that the industry is not yet ready to have a sensible chat about what the use cases are. I had a really good presentation from a crew called Exobrain last week, which you might be interested in. I'll show, but where they were starting to set out some of the use cases, and what they said is the way to start to understand the use cases. And I just made this up, but fortunately, you talk enough every now and then, you're right. They said, as AI consultants, you start with a chatbot. You get people to engage with the systems that you've got and the data that you've got through the chatbot, use the chatbot to understand what people are asking, expand the scope, blah, 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 and then you can start to build it into workflow and other use cases, right? Eminently sensible. I was like, thank goodness, because that's what I was doing anyway, right?
Yes.
But the reason that I haven't thrown even more technological resources at AI, and then why it would be foolhardy for a CTO in a business to try and do that in an asset manager business, is because you kind of got to wait for again, if I'm being genuine in what I say, you want the business people driving the business decisions.
Yes.
Therefore, you need them to tell. You kind of need to educate them on what's possible with AI. We're doing it with a chatbot. There are other ways. And then we're saying, right, okay, with that understanding of what you've seen in our little system, Fundipedia, and how you've interrogated your data, where else do you now, with that understanding? And it was no different with me. I had to use ChatGPT and Claude and get a feeling for where the edges of it are. And then I now use it for the things I know it's good at, but I'm not necessarily going after it for everything. I do still use Google every now and then, right? Because I know that ChatGPT could hallucinate. You need to give the business people the opportunity to do that. So, yeah, a strength in that crew on the EAP is that there aren't too many techies. I'm glad that I'm there representing techies, but I like that my voice shouldn't, in this context, but I should be listening more than I'm talking, for sure.
I think you're right. I think the ecosystem on the buy side, whether it's an asset manager or a wealth manager, I think they all of the roles within that business, they need to listen to each other and feed off each other. I think there's an education piece around technology about what's possible.
Yeah.
The business can learn that from the technologists.
Yeah.
But I think the technologists need to learn from client engagement. They need to understand what the clients of our clients need and look for.
And it takes a while for that information and data to come down the pipe. Whatever, you kind of need to limit the amount of IT work that you do. In this case, we're talking about AI, but it could also apply to blockchain or anything else that's new, right? And not accidentally build things that you end up going down a couple of alleyways that actually then throw away, because that's obviously not great for morale. It's not great for going on a journey with a business. If you build something and it's not quite right, they're going to go, well, I told you this AI stuff was rubbish. And actually, no, the IT guys just didn't do a good enough job of the depth of understanding. The first thing, and this is why I love my IT guys, because they're so real and on it and talented, but also, they're not just prepared to say yes to me because I happen to be the MD and one of the founders, right? And it was only a week or so ago, my head of architecture said, AI, even within Fundy, is only as good as the model's understanding of the data that we store and why we store it.
Of course.
So until you can tell me what that is, don't even worry about even the chatbot side, right? And we, like I say, we're building all this stuff out, but we're being diligent in trying not to get too far ahead of the businesses that we're serving.
It's interesting. I mean, we're jumping ahead to our. We've run a survey recently, and I'm sure I shouldn't be talking about this now, but I think there are two outcomes that we're seeing from that. Is actually, one is that, and they relate to exactly what you just said. One is companies are finding it quite difficult to establish the right business case.
Yeah.
because that's exactly that moment, isn't it, between the interaction between business, technology, client, marketing, that whole ecosystem trying to move in the same direction. It's not easy
It's a
in
nightmare.
these firms.
Yeah.
And the second thing, actually, you mentioned earlier, if you don't get your data and your data governance right, any of the technology that leans on that data, dare I say, garbage in, garbage out, etc., that it will be flawed.
Yeah.
So these are some of the basics around, I guess, growing and building a business that the buy side has to embrace, doesn't it? Get the right business case.
Yeah.
Deal with your data.
There's so much boring work that goes on around all of this, right?
By boring, you mean exciting, enthusiastic, and for everyone.
Yeah, of course.
No,
I mean,
it's true. It's foundational work. All
it's
of it.
foundational work, right? Like we did a meme recently on LinkedIn about, you can't have good AI without good data, and it blew up a little bit. We don't really like overusing memes. I don't want the I love this word, and this will get beeped out, the enshittification of LinkedIn to continue. We don't want to be a cause of that, decline on LinkedIn. But it's a true fact that building a business case is actually a bit of a skill.
Yes.
I remember, and I won't name them because they're incredible people, and what they did shouldn't have happened, but thank goodness they did. I remember I had a company that wanted to onboard Fundipedia, and the person who was trying to build the business case was thoroughly fed up that his calls to get us into the building had been dismissed over a period of many months. So he said, what I want you to do, Simon, is to give me one of your members of your team. So I sent my co-founder up there because this is super early days, and we were just trying to say, he went, and Dean is my co-founder, the most incredible technologist I've ever worked with, period, full stop, the end. A genius. And I don't throw that word lightly around. And he went and sat in their offices on a contract for 6 months because the chap that popped us in there said, I want you to turn up every day. And Dean's the kind of guy that did actually solve some problems for them. He wouldn't have just sat there, lifeless. But I want you to turn up every day, and I want you to say, have we started the Fundipedia project yet?
Really?
Yeah. That is what I am paying you £1,000 or whatever it was a day to do. And in hindsight, if he hadn't done that, if he hadn't put his head on it, that is head chopping block territory, right? It's outrageous if somebody found out. I mean, even more so these days with the crush on resources. But back then, that is such a what the kids might call a boss move, right? And it worked because sooner or later someone went, this chap's driving us mad. Dean's a great guy. I bet the rest of Fundipedia is decent too. Should we just do it? Because otherwise, this guy's just going to keep, bringing Dean in, and this is a nonsense. And that's probably the most extreme example that I can put forward of a rogue, guerrilla style tactic business case maker. You don't necessarily want all your business case makers to be that kind of, out there on it, but you do want them to be that dynamic when it comes to thinking about how they're going to make a case. And actually what you need them to do is to come to you and say, what have your other clients done?
Yes.
It's such a simple question. And you give them almost a laundry list of, right, well, they were able to take these two vendors out. They were able to reduce or redeploy, better still, headcount over here, here, and here. They massively reduced their cost around governance on this bit and this bit, optimized all this other, and before you know it, you've got a 10-page slide deck that you read back yourself and you go, blimey, I'd buy that.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, if as a supplier we're not bought into it emotionally, if we don't see the numbers stacking up, then actually we can't beat up our clients for not being able to surface that data themselves. No. But even with all of that energy, we've still had it go wrong. Sometimes clients, fall foul of the political landscape, bless them, and so they don't get the budget that year, and they're like, come back next year, and that's okay. Yeah. But that happens too.
I think we'll probably come back to that onboarding. That's what you're leading towards on how we do that. I think that'd be good to do. The other side of that, of the negative side of the SWOT. So we're thinking about weaknesses and threats. Where, I mean, we've talked about this before, almost about other incumbent, other fintechs or other interlopers coming into the industry, or do you think that there's a chance that the industry might sort of implode upon itself, or believe itself too much? All of the, what's the sort of weaknesses and threats do you see across the market?
The obvious weaknesses in the business are the legacy systems, right?
Right.
There's just shed loads of them. And there's decisions that were taken about how data needs to be stored and moved around and presented that actually were for regulatory requirements, right? Your kids, your MiFID stuff, your PRIP stuff. And those decisions were made using the best intention and the best technology at the time. But now you've got these monumentally large PDF generation, fact sheet generation machines. And there's a whole host of other kind of data dissemination and data storage decisions that, as best as we're trying to unify them by giving all of our clients guardrails in the form of Fundipedia, there's a whole host of, we're only in the product and more recently the client account master space. There's a whole host of other data that sits outside of us, and certainly the market data vendor side of it. Firms are spending an extraordinary amount of data buying it in, pushing it through systems that are difficult to maintain and insanely expensive. And generally, what you might call a lot of cottage industries within these businesses that are a weakness. They're frail. These systems, they're embedded. It's insanely expensive to take them out.
Yes.
And if you get it wrong again, it can be insanely expensive. Not just once. It can. So trying to a weakness is a fundamental challenge around extracting those legacy systems. And I guess again, it goes back to the business advocacy side of it. Having someone brave enough with enough career in front of them rather than behind them to say, I don't want to put up with this for another 10 years. I kind of need this to be, so this is actually a headache, and I'm going to resolve this one way or the other. One of the weaknesses was around, therefore them building lots of solutions, right? So some firms even now are having to they got it. They're right. This legacy technology needs to go, or we've got to stop using special. And then they built a product master, and that hasn't gone so well. So, but the good news is that they're starting to move away from that. It's rare that we see firms building systems anymore in our space. It doesn't make sense to. I don't think.
I remember years ago that the build, buy, borrow, whatever you can think about. I think that was a credible story years ago because it was a relatively, arguably the market is still relatively immature and it's in its troublesome teenagers. I don't know what it might be, but
that's fair.
But I think you're right. I think that the capability now of third parties, of vendors, of fintech or whatever you might call them, have reached a level of maturity that they are trustworthy within a business, aren't they? And frankly, what is an asset manager or wealth manager's core business? Is it tech build?
BlackRock, maybe. Everyone else, stand down. Yeah, a little bit. I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek there when I say it like that. Obviously there has to be an element of technology. You've got your laptops, you've got your infrastructure.
Of course.
There are things that firms must do at scale in order to, have a sensible organisation. But like with all of these things, there's a spectrum, right? And there's the firms that are drowning in legacy, that are so far behind, nobody knows even really where to start. Heavily bureaucratic, very political. They're struggling. And especially where you've got a bit of a despot as a CTO, sometimes that happens too. You end up in these situations where they've built this fiefdom. They've got a team of 200 developers, and my goodness, I'm going to grow that team by 10% again next year.
Yeah.
So, you get all of that. That's probably not ideal. The other end of the spectrum really is cool though, right? So the super smart businesses have understood that data is a priority. And for many years have banged that drum and got their life in order. Not only have they understood that data is a priority, they've understood that as a result of the regulations moving around them and the change in demographic that they service and all these other kind of ephemeral things that are constantly evolving and changing, they've said, you know what, not only are we going to bring in, and I'm going to say Fundipedia, but a point fintech solution to solve this problem. Do you know what else we're going to do? We're going to start treating them like our outsourced IT software development department, but just in this space. We don't want to expand them too far, But in the remit that we've given them, and maybe an extra 30%, but no more than that, because otherwise we'll start to create another monster. And actually, as a fintech, we often have to say, no, that's outside of scope. We're not going there. But they start to say, guys, it'd be really good if it did this. And I tell you what, once they get used to the answers, yes, what's the question? They don't ramp that up. And so we end up with this. We're having, like, one of our challenges as we scale now is just managing the sheer scale of feedback of things that people want, big and small.
Right.
But how incredible that they've obviously seen enough of us listening that they continue to tell us what they want. And they really do go, this is genius. I've now got, I mean, within reason, obviously, we can't just build a mess if we say yes to everything. But I've now got an IT team, a crew of software developers that understand my use cases deeply and care about evolving the solution to meet not just today's issues, but the issues going forward. You know, again, another comparison against the in-house IT guys is that they like the nice new shiny thing until the next nice new shiny thing comes along. And then, do you know what I could do without having to maintain that boring old product disaster system that we built 10 years ago?
And I remember hearing recently from a client, they were talking that the only way, and it was that extreme, but the only way they can respond to their client demands is by leveraging third-party fintech.
Yeah.
You know, other vendors, and or, as you're saying, extending into their own development capability.
Yeah.
And I think that actually lends itself towards thinking the buy-side firms, they have to have a very strong way of dealing with third parties. That vendor management, and it used to just be vendor management, but now, of course, it's services, and I think that has to mature.
I do too. I think everything from the onboarding side of things is a starting point. I mean, that's just an absolute challenge in many ways. Even the business themselves, the worst version of that, again, spectrum, right? You know, you got your best of breed, you get your middle. Most people hang out in the middle, and then you got your not great. The worst version of that is when you get to the business and they think they're going on one procurement journey, and then partway through it changes. And they go, guys, I know I said we were going to do it this way, and you filled out all of this paperwork, but it turns out there's actually another way.
Right.
And this way is actually meant to be quicker, but it's obviously, you know, another 3 months. Or they've just found out that you're storing this type of data. So I said that we'd be done in a week, but actually the procurement journey is going to take another 6 months.
Yes.
That is a struggle. Because obviously what it means is that young fintechs that are, you know, live or die by their next deal, contract, and the you know, sums of money that should flow somewhat shortly after, because payment isn't always within 30 days. That's for
They're
sure.
starved of their oxygen, aren't they?
Right. And then they go bust, and then the opportunity that the industry had to bring something in that could have been super exciting dies with it.
Yes.
And that can die in VC terms too, right? It's not just bootstrap firms, it's however they're funded. Because obviously the VCs or the PE firms want to see an ROI, you know, 3x whatever over whatever period of time. And so they expect to see that, you know, come on, how? And the number one question I've always been asked by fintechs who I help out when I can is, how do I make more sales faster? And I normally point them to the fact that we've been doing this for 18 years, and they go, oh.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions, relatively quick fire.
Okay.
To finish with.
Yeah.
You mentioned being a senior advisor to the Investment Association.
Yeah.
And it's a totally unfair question, but we try. Mm-hmm. One piece of advice for the fintech and one piece of advice for the asset managers. Both sides of that coin.
I'll give the advice on the fintech side of it.
Go on.
I'll then, hopefully my brain will conjure up something for the asset manager side of it. The fintech side of it's easy because I can extrapolate from the first and pretty much only question that all the fintechs I'm trying to help ask. How am I going to either get, if they haven't got any yet, or if they've only got 1 or 2, or dramatically increase the amount I'm selling of my system?
Yep.
In asset management world, the answer to that is create FOMO and terrify them with regulation and what happens in the event. Like, so there is an answer.
Yeah.
And maybe they always were asking that question, but my suspicion is, as most people are probably like me, that they've probably, if they were really honest with themselves, spent too much time thinking about what they're going to supply and not enough about how they're going to find a demand. And they're now kind of trying to play catch up on that. And nobody likes to be told that what they want to supply is rubbish, please go away. But the reality is getting that answer like yesterday is better than finding out today. So Sales is the hardest thing of fintech, full stop. The end. No other questions. That is it. So if everything you're doing isn't ruthlessly focused on how you're going to make more sales all day, every day, more or less, then you're going to struggle.
And that comes from fostering and understanding the demand.
It comes from having lots of coffee and beer if necessary. It is literally no time spent in front of your target audience is wasted time.
Yes.
You know, it's how we came to be sat here.
Yeah.
It's how we came to be. All the relationships that we have were, would you mind if I could please take you out for a coffee and ask you a question or two about my thing? And you'd be amazed. People love being asked that. They love it most of the time. If they've got the time and they've got the brain in them, they're going to be prepared to share their knowledge because the best people want to. On the asset manager side, what would I like to see? What
advice would you give them?
I would give them the advice that they should join up to create a sensible anything that isn't a
competitive?
Anything that isn't a competitive advantage should be created as a utility for the whole industry.
Interesting.
So that could be procurement. Procurement is not a competitive advantage, right? If you could all work together and reduce the amount of time it takes to onboard fintechs from 6 months down to 3, everybody benefits.
Let's say you have a catalogue or a library of all the fintechs and it's rated in a certain way.
Yeah.
How you interpret that and what you want to do as your business is very different from A to B to C, isn't it?
If somebody gave me a sensible platform upon which I could declare all the things I do, like my ISO, all of that, and give me a little badge, and if all the asset managers went, that's a badge that we trust, everybody would benefit. You know, if the asset managers, bless them, could get together on some of the cottage industries that exist within them and start not necessarily just playing, dancing to the FCA tune, but instead proposing that they drive certain things forward around how certain other areas of their systems work, then that would be good too. So
it's collaborate on the 80%, isn't it? Whatever the ratio is.
And then the 20%, the secret sauce on the inside, go ham on, go mad on, then you generate the alpha the way in which you need to do that. For sure.
Cool. Now that makes sense. Last question.
Yeah.
I'm giving you that magic wand.
Yeah.
I'm giving that magic wand so you can transform any part of the industry. You could change things. You could bring in Elon Musk to run asset management for you. You could bring in Donald Trump to come in. Exactly.
Yeah. Use X as a
as a trading tool.
Distribution platform.
That'll be safe.
Yeah, right. And totally moderated, and nothing will ever go wrong.
What?
I'm genuinely happy with where it is, and there's nothing that I would say that I would probably wish away all of the technical debt, so that then
I like that.
Yeah, so that then we could do something. We could spend more time on the forward rather than the backwards.
I mean, the industry is so good at adding.
Yes,
adding and adding and adding, and it's almost as if I'd like a firm that was known for taking away, and there isn't one.
Not at the moment. There's not. No, there's it.
But so wishing away the tech. My goodness, you'd make lots of people's lives happier, wouldn't you?
You would. Yeah, I thought you were going to say you'd make lots of people redundant.
No, I don't know. But I'm not so sure that's the case, actually. I just think that there's enough technology in a business. I mean, you said before, even though asset managers don't need to build all their own technology necessarily, but managing it properly is still critically important, and understand that data flow.
Yeah.
And you just want to, you want to transpose all those spreadsheets and, the product that Jim built 37 years ago and is now in Hawaii. You just want to get rid of that, don't you?
A little bit. And then allow people to be redeployed into things that add infinitely more value than just keeping the lights on. For sure.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's been fascinating.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Cheers.